Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first of the cross-school program. It's a chance to meet all the heads of program from the other programs within the school. A chance to kind of meet as many students as we can fit into this room. And if there are people outside who are watching this streaming, we've still got 2 seats down the front here, and we'd be delighted for you to join us down here. We're sorry we can't fit you all into the same room today, but we're hoping that you'll be receiving this either today because you're sitting watching this streamed live, or because you're watching it in a few hours' time as it goes up onto YouTube and it's all being recorded for you. My name is Nick DeLay, and I'm standing in for Paul Anderson today. I'm head of the Service Design program, but we have sitting here, and will be very, very animated as part of it, Guy Colbon from Intelligent Mobility, Rob Phillips from Design Products, Zoe Broach, who is fashion, the fashionista par excellence, and Toomey from Textiles, and we're just waiting for the arrival of Stephen, who heads up GID and IDE as part of this as well. So we've got all of us, and we want to kind of settle into a kind of conversation today. We're going to show you all a little bit about each of the programs in turn, so that you get a really good feel, not just about what we're doing in our program, but what our own personal attitude and philosophy to design is. And then we're going to have a kind of conversation between us on this topic. And then we want to open it up to your questions. Now, this is a conversation. And the challenge of a conversation is you've got to converse with us. Is that going to be okay? Yes. Yeah, yes, come on. Because we want you, you know, it's when you don't agree with us that's where we find new ground. We want to encourage. This is a space for encouraging critical thinking, but informed critical thinking. And that's what we want to happen here. Stephen, welcome. Yes, Stephen Wang. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to run through a little bit about the vision of the School of Design. This is something that we forged as a team together. And later on, you'll have an opportunity to meet with Paul Anderson. Oh gosh, this is a clicker that needs to be designed by Design Products or Innovation Design Engineering. It's very sensitive. Okay, you all know why you came to the RCA, because of these. But the reason the RCA has all of these is because of past generation of students like you, who have gone out there and made a difference. There was a marvelous term that was coined back in the late 60s about the Royal College of Art. And I just absolutely love it. It should be the kind of motto of the School of Design. And it's the future starts here. Everything that you see out there, designed by so many other great designers, almost all of them originated here at the Royal College of Art. So the way the world looks today is by the designers who 20 years ago graduated, or even more. In my case, I graduated from the Royal College of Art. Went out. And the reason it's most influential is not just because of the great students we have here, the great staff we have here, but all those that have gone before you, which means the onus is on you. If the college's reputation is not like this in 20 years' time, it's your fault, not ours. Okay, because we've got to keep going on that. Now let's see if this clicker will go. It still likes to jump over things. Now, this is the building, and this is the studio I was in decades and decades and decades ago as a young industrial designer. And my professor was a man called Misha Black. And he had been appointed in 1959. Without giving too much away, he retired in 1975, and I was still one of his students then. But he transformed the nature of design education and design thinking. An incredible man, an incredible thinker as part of it. And I was a kind of young 22-year-old when I graduated. Do we have anybody that's 22 even in this room today? A few of you. Oh, I feel for you. Look, honestly, you know, when at 22, I came to the Royal College of Art. It was kind of, well, I was actually 21 when I came here. My eyes were opened to the astonishing creativity and the culture of the people and the challenges to culture. It was a time when punk was just beginning. Everything was going on. The world was still having the aftershocks of the 1968 kind of cultural revolution that had taken place. It was a scary and exciting time. And I was the model student, and I shouldn't have been. Because out there in South Kensington, where you are, I can honestly say this is the hottest cultural spot on the planet, and it's 600 meters by 600 meters. And you don't even know it yet. But I missed out on the fact that the Royal College of Music, when I was a student, as it is today, will have 3 concerts per day at the Royal College of Music. So Google Royal College of Music events. Immerse yourself in the music of South Kensington, the #1 conservatoire. 14 Nobel Prize winners emerged from across the road at Imperial College. You've got to get a chunk of that. The business school invites the great and the good from the world of commerce and business, the great world of entrepreneurs. The scientific community welcomes the Nobel Prize winners, and they talk. And every week there are things going on at Imperial College like that. The world's greatest explorers set off from the Royal Geographic Society. That's on the corner. Just on the corner there. And you can go in and experience that. Go and have lunch at the Royal Geographic Society, for God's sake. You may be rubbing shoulders with Sir Ranulph Fiennes or whoever else has gone around the world. The great museums, the Lates program. The Lates program at the museum, you can have cocktails with the curators at the V&A. It's an amazing place. So you have landed in the hottest spot culturally. 3 of the world's greatest museums, 3 of the world's greatest institutions for education. Amazing. And all covering lots of different areas. So drink it all in. Don't be like me as the young 22-year-old, a model student who went to his lectures, did very nicely. Go off and challenge and experience all of it. That's what I want you to do. Now, this is just the range of different master's programs we have here. Do not feel constrained to your program. Meet students who are involved in the others, come to some of the talks we give, participate in projects with other students, but again, make the most of this fabulous moment. Also, we will teach you only, I'm sorry to say, we're only going to teach you this much. And you're going to learn this much more from your colleagues. And you're going to explore and find this much more outside. But the bit we teach you sets you on the right trajectory. Now, this is just a picture of one course, IDE, and its global nature. All of our programs, as you've experienced already, are like that. So the bit you learn from your colleagues, their backgrounds, they might be in political science or computer science or anthropology. Who knows? Find out what your colleagues are doing and learn from them. It's an incredible learning experience. Now, part of the vision that we have for the School of Design is very much made manifest after you've left. But the thinking and the resources are being applied right now, which is why we are creating, and these already exist, our research centers, which will simply grow. And the reason we're doing that is that the world is going through a dramatic transformation in technologies, in ways of thinking that has been unmatched for 120 years. 120 years ago, if you'd been born in the 1890s, suddenly there'd be the telephone, there'd be electric light bulbs, there'd be electric trams. None of these existed before. By the time you got to the beginning of the 20th century, suddenly planes took off in 1904. I mean, cars started to roll off the production line. Suddenly there was this era of untrammeled and unprecedented technological change. And then lots of things happened in the 20th century. And suddenly, at the beginning of the 21st, we're going through another burst of that. And these technologies, these new ways of thinking, these new paradigms in behavior are not going to be established just by technologists and scientists and politicians. They need to be designed, and they need to be designed by people like us. People who will grab these opportunities to create transformation and make it happen. That's why we're building labs like this here. We want you to understand about AI and robotics and the fabulous new materials. And there's a reason for that. These are the great illustrious names that have passed through the Royal College of Art in recent years in the world of design. And here are some in the world of arts. And you're going to follow in their footsteps. And some of you will be in all of these pictures when this is shown 20 years from now, hopefully in a bigger lecture theatre than this one. But I want to give you some personal reflections as well on the world of design and why I think the world has never needed design as much as it needs it right now. This is a marvelous machine. This is a rapid prototyping sintering machine that takes solar rays and sinters sand, and it tracks the sun so that it is able to build structures by fusing the sand through this solar energy, the beam focusing down and literally melting the sand into glass. And it can build structures. Now, it was an idea of a student from here, and to me it embodies all the elements that are important right now. It's a comment associated with the dramatic issues of climate change that are facing us. It's a question of bringing different disciplines together. It's inspiring different ways. NASA looked at this and thought, my God, that's the way we can build structures on the moon. Sintering the dust of another planet to build structures. So things of global importance that change the way people think. And we have to do that because 2050 is just around the corner. Now, all of you in this room will have reached perhaps the zenith of your careers. Maybe you've got more to go at 2050. But 2050, there'll be 9.7 billion people on this planet, so it'll be more crowded than these kind of rooms. We'll need 70% more food production by 2050. But where's the land going to come from for that when we have issues of global warming? You've seen the global warming report, the new one from the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. It said we can't go to 2 degrees. 1.5 is the maximum. We've got to change everything as part of it. We're living through the 6th largest extinction of species because of contamination of the air, the water, the planet. Economic disparity has resulted in many kind of political issues, and you could only say right now, and I have a bit more history and knowledge than you do yet because I've lived through it. We are entering a darker period politically. It's the era of so-called strength, the world of fake, everything. And we've got to address that. And these are big systemic issues that we face. Now, let me just try and put that in perspective. We talk about 2 degrees of climate change. This is a chart that was shown in this room by the head of the Climate Change Institute only about 6 months ago. And what it shows is that the 2 degrees is kind of mostly in the southern hemisphere. For us, in the northern hemisphere, in the UK, a hot day in 2050 will be 45 degrees. And you've not yet experienced the RCA air conditioning systems. They don't work at 30 degrees. 45, everything changes as part of it. If we're going to change that, we've got to kind of go on a different track. Now, this is the track we're on right now, and this is where we need to get to in terms of emissions. And what does that look like? It means, let's just take today in the UK, that's our carbon emissions. By law, we have signed up to get to here. So if you take all the emissions today across all of these, that's where we've got to get to 2 degrees. Now, I just illustrate this because this is just one of about 6 other indicators. Don't want to depress you, but it's a bit worrying, isn't it? Now, we can look at the other side because there is a perfect storm of technological change taking place right now. A perfect storm, which is like 120 years ago. and it's all happening at once. So the tools that you have as designers to work with, in terms of digital technologies, in terms of new materials, in terms of new ways of thinking, it's talked about as being the fourth industrial revolution powered by these technologies, and that's probably an understatement. It is the revolution of revolutions, and it needs designers, because the planet will not design itself, it needs us. Now, there are lots of things which have been put in play in order to be able to address this. Here's carbon sequestration and other tools and techniques for doing it. We've got thinking like the circular economy, the ways we think about how we will design for the future. We've got marvelous designers looking at whole areas. This is part of the £8 million grant that we have in intelligent mobility. So there are lots of things that are going on here at the RCA. And my plea to you as designers is the following. Do you know how many days there are to 2050? Anybody work it out quickly? Let me go and just qualify it for a moment. There are 220 working days a year. So if you take that, you multiply it by the number of days. As of today, there are 6,875 working days to 2050. Because we do expect you to take some holidays. Take the weekend off. You know, but 6,875. Now, if you had 6,875 pounds to last you to graduation, you'd watch every penny, wouldn't you? Every single penny. I did a chart earlier this morning, and I mustn't have uploaded it onto this deck. I went and put 6,875 dots on a page. And you know what? You can read it from the back of this room. 6,875. That's all we've got to 2050. So, when I say that the School of Design is committed to you to making sure that the 2 years you spend here is going to be transformational in your lives, because we need to transform you to address the big issues. And every design choice you make in the future, that choice you make can make the world a little bit better, or it can make the world a little bit grubbier, a little bit dirtier, it can make the world a little bit hotter. It can contribute to the problem or contribute to the solution. So can I implore you, because we're going to be on your side on this, we want you to be the innovators who go out there and make the most incredible difference to society, to culture, to all of those issues that we face today. We want you to immerse yourself in them and come out and make an impact on that. And that's what this team is sitting here wanting you to achieve. Are you up for it? Are you up for it? Yeah. Thank God for that. Right. Okay, enough from me. I'm going to ask who would like to come up first and talk about their program. Anne, are you going to come first? Okay. I've got your charts up here. So, thank you very much. Whoa. Anne, I've got yours up straight away. There we go.
Brilliant. Morning, everybody. So I'm head of the textiles program, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what textiles means to me and my colleagues who are all part of the staff team here. For us, the study of textiles is about developing this unique materials vocabulary. Every single designer has a unique perspective on how they interpret their material world. And how you assemble that and put that together with a poetic and sensorial expression is down to your unique creative personality. And what we're interested in doing is creating lots of unique voices that are able to give materials different characteristics, different voices, other than just their technical properties. So for us, textiles is not just about how it feels. That's really important. There's a tangibility of things, but it's how it makes us feel. Because the textile, our material world, resonates with all of us, and that's our responsibility to direct that and to contribute to that experience. So for our practitioners, materials-led exploration is really important, and we call this thinking through making. And it might seem to some observers that perhaps cutting and sticking with bits of sellotape and things might not be an intellectual inquiry, but believe me, it is. The way that we work and the way that we put our things together is not just an assembly of material bits, but it is about critical inquiry, and it's led through making processes, working at one-to-one scale. Textiles is a massive, massive, massive global industry. Not all of our practitioners here at our college are concerned with mass industry. Some people, we have a variety of different kinds of textile practitioners, from the individual artist and craftsperson to the commercial designer. Sometimes working on things for the body, for things for spatial, for accessories, for all different types of scales, all different types of expressions. And that's up to you guys to decide what those are. We give a loose framework, but we expect and we want people to push those frameworks aside and find the new ones, because as Nick said quite rightly earlier, it's about those interspaces and the things that are beyond the boundaries, that are the exciting things that we want you all to do. We are concerned with the macro effects of what we do. So how a material is conceived, how it is then generated into something larger. How do you use this? How can we revisit the role of craft and design within emerging industrial contexts? How will we make things in the future? Will they still go through looms, knitting machines? Maybe not. Maybe they're sprayed. Maybe they're built. Maybe they're sintered out of a giant magnifying glass and a desert. There are lots of new ways to assemble things that can assemble themselves. So we ask you as well to think about that assembly. These are just some little projects that the staff team are interested in and working on. So on the right-hand side, we have some work at the moment which is about exploring the uses of graphene for integrating that with textiles, primarily with wearable technologies. And specifically, this project is about creating a graphene antenna. We're also very interested in the craftsmanship of working with new materials with unusual and unfamiliar properties, things that we might not know quite what to do with when we're faced with them, things that might have very intangible qualities that are difficult to assess through that one-to-one making experience that we know. So what are the challenges of working with the new materials that are coming our way? Then we have a few projects over on the left-hand side. The top left is about redesigning the nuclear decommissioning suit. This hasn't been done for decades. Needs doing. It's incredibly uncomfortable for workers who are wearing it, but also there's an opportunity here to improve how we find out about how the person wearing the suit is feeling, what their status of their health and well-being is. So this is working with an industrial partner using optical fiber sensors and also configuring the macro envelope of the suit itself. We're also working with Istanbul on aspects of soft robotics and things that can potentially assemble themselves, and to create a language that, through materials, that doesn't require words, it doesn't require literacy, it doesn't require all of those things, somebody being able to teach somebody young about something you can discover for yourself, because materials have their own properties, and we want to be able to harness that and create a materials language. And then down at the bottom left, is a project that we're working on with somebody called Jenny Tillotson, and this is about the effect of scent as a material. So not all of our materials we consider to be tangible and things that we can hold and see. Some of the materials that we use are intangible. So we work with this kind of strange mix of things that you can see, things that you can feel, things that you can't see, things that you know, things that you don't know, trying to configure that into ways that make sense and help us to solve some of the societal problems for the 21st century. And then I'd just like to finish with this short piece here. I have no sound. Okay, hang on. Okay, that's a shame. This is the project of one of our textile graduates, Lauren Bowker, who is the creator of a company called The Unseen. She created this flag for Somerset House, which was a response to the pollution in the City of London. And as she's created a colour change ink that works so that as you get more carbon monoxide within the air, the flag changes. So she wanted to demonstrate through this several things. That number one, you can use textiles as a means for communication, that it can be a way of interpreting data and delivering data to people, and also to raise awareness about some very critical issues that Nick has already pointed out earlier on in the talk today, and that we're hoping you guys are going to be able to pick up that banner and run with it. Okay, that's textiles. Thank you.
Right. We're going to have now Guy come up and talk to us about intelligent mobility. Let me just bring your charts out.
Okay. Welcome. I'm one of the tutors from Intelligent Mobility. Unfortunately, I'm not Dr. Chris Thorpe, because unfortunately he's got flu. Just a quick overview of intelligent mobility. It hasn't always been intelligent mobility. We started many, many decades ago as automotive design, probably called car design. And then back in the early 1990s, we changed to vehicle design. And now we're called intelligent mobility. And there's some interesting reasons for that. But first of all, intelligent mobility. Why intelligent mobility? Well, we're going from cars as objects to mobility as a system. That is a massive change in thinking. Now, why is that? You know, you think about cars and transportation. Well, quite simply, the role of a car has changed. You have this traditional view still of what a car is. You've got this great, fantastic image of the heyday of the automobile in the 1950s and 1960s in the US. This idea of going to a drive-in movie in a car and sitting in your car. That great feeling of freedom and that great image and that whole idea that the automobile was sold to the world on. And we went from that kind of idea of the culture and also the fundamental grounding of automotive design, which is, of course, the car is the object. The object is the important thing. The object is what we desire, what we crave. The visual purity and the visual language of that is everything, or was everything. That is where we're seeing the massive change now. As my colleagues have been mentioning this morning, we're in a massive state of change everywhere. And transportation design pretty much is front and center of that, because we've had this strange thing that's happened as we've been suddenly realizing we are part of a problem, a very significant part of the problems that the world is facing. So you go from this vision, by the way, this car was designed by an RCA graduate, Peter Schreier, into this new idea of looking at a much more holistic view of mobility. Mobility as a system, not just viewing the car as a standalone object. Our role as mobility designers grows outside that and starts touching on many more areas of experience design, fashion, materials, just the whole idea of UX. So all of these things become quite important, and that's within the context of a massively changing world. The issues we've got now of hyper-urbanization, the fact that the number of megacities in the world is growing rapidly, the idea of people it's quite normal to live in a city of over 10 million people, and all the challenges that brings to try to move people around. People still want to move, people still want mobility. but they want it in a different way. They need it to operate effectively in a completely different environment than we saw before. You've also got these massive challenges, again, as Nick was saying earlier, of the environment. We've got a massive challenge now of electrification and renewable power, when we've been dealing with fossil fuels for the last 120 years in vehicles. What does that mean? We're still trying to understand what that means, and this is a massive change for the industry and for society and for the users. On top of that, we've got another key change. We've got the whole idea of autonomy starting to come in. This is not something that's going to happen. This is happening right now. And it's got a huge change of thinking applied to it that every designer needs to understand. This image you see on the left is a vision of an autonomous vehicle that was done in the late 1950s. And then, of course, you've got the vision on the right, which is from Minority Report, which is even like 15 years ago, and you're still looking at things that are massively changing. We're still trying to understand the impacts of that, the impacts of what it means for the designed object, the impact for what it means for the users. And all of this comes together to create a far more complex design opportunity. All of these opportunities goes far beyond the design object. So you start looking at completely different ideas in what mobility design needs to involve. The idea of inclusion and empathy, this is a massive opportunity for us as designers. You can understand the ideas. How can we work with nature? It's almost been previously viewed as being a battle. How can we work hand in hand in partnership with nature for better, more meaningful mobility experiences? These ideas, can we move from a more natural form of existence in future urban spaces? Can we balance the influence of mobility on that? And of course, very topical considering the news yesterday. All these ideas of resource and sustainability, everything comes back into the mobility design. Everything here is a challenge. So you understand this is a hugely interesting area to work in, and we're looking at a massive change and a massive opportunity. The idea of how does nature move? Taking the ideas from nature. Nature is beautifully mobile. You can see how it works. It feels natural. There's somehow a connective idea towards nature. So how can you feed that back into mobility, moving just beyond that industrial designed object? The idea of movement being organic, flowing, fluid, connected, things happen naturally. These are the opportunities that you've got, and these are the opportunities that any kind of mobility designer and the greater design area has to work in. You're looking at these ideas coming together. I mean, the idea previously that, and being a car designer in the past, you viewed yourself as being special because we were designing these beautiful, desirable objects. We've got to go beyond that now. The industry has to change, the designs have to change, the designers' thinking has to change. And everything about society, but how that mobility works in that society, has to change. This idea of biomimetics as an approach. What is mobility? What should it be? And as I hit on earlier, these ideas, what are meaningful mobility experiences? People want more. People need more. The role of a car is an extension of the self, ego, the promise of liberation from rules and society. This idea of, that we've always sold car design on. Marlon Brando in The Wild One. Where you are, who you're with, goes far beyond that designed object. The idea of a ritual process. Again, this is what my colleagues at other courses are all talking about. We're almost seeing, our courses starting to overlap quite seriously, which is hugely exciting. Where does our course stop? An IDE or design products or fashion, textiles, all of these, where does one end and the other start? It doesn't. There's so much overlap. And that's where the opportunity and excitement really comes. So the idea of design being a catalyst, a very strong, powerful idea. You know, the power of invention. Invention is design, and design is driving vision. You know, Elon Musk is viewed as the current Tesla, possibly in all the good and bad ways of that kind of ego-driven, maniacal, you know, visionary. But pushing the boundaries of possibility and driving change. You know, we've got these ideas of, you know, again, these mobility experiences, storytelling in virtual worlds within the mobility. You know, we've got these ideas, and this is one of our current students' piece of work in emotional tech in mobility. How do you drive that experience, and how do you make those ideas of mobility more meaningful? You know, the idea of mobility as opportunity is expanding massively. We're not just designing cars, and we won't just be designing cars. We go far beyond that now, and this is because it's important. You know, we take this view on the course as mindset and skill set. We're trying to move both, you know, forwards. So this is the ideas of what intelligent mobility is. We're trying to, and it's an ongoing process. We're trying to drive everything forward. And this is a challenge for the designers on the course and every designer in this college. How do you move this forwards? Because your ideas, your thoughts, and the value of your creativity is needed now more than ever before. Thanks very much.
Guy, thank you. Guy, thank you very much indeed. I'm just going to set up now for Stephen to... Stephen, I hope I've got the right ones for you. I hope all our videos work.
It seems like the right one.
Yeah, it's the right one. Stephen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, guys. Thank you very much, Nick, for your kind introduction. I'm the head of GID and IDE, and this is two programs emphasize on innovation. But obviously, you can see we are taking different approaches towards innovative design. One of the order is quite interesting. One of the differences is we don't really try to emphasize self so much. Maybe it's a little bit different to the intelligent mobility. We try to emphasize on the society. We try to look at the big picture, right? So what's the big picture? From the technology development, right, such as AI, artificial intelligence, we have this. When we look at our civilization, we have this developed the Turing test from 1950s, and coming to human-machine symbiosis in the 60s, and we start to explore the possibility for natural language analysis processing 1970s, and then we come to 1980s, and we have this American Association of AI, right? And then we start to have in the 2017 AlphaGo and 2016 AlphaGo, 2017 we have the AlphaGo 0. So we have such rapid development of AI, and all of these other technologies, like previously they mentioned graphene material, nanomaterial, all of these different materials, new technologies coming up. However, when we look at our society, we still have these challenges. Right. So these challenges including when we look at carbon dioxide emission in 1950s, when Turing developed Turing test, it was 4.1 billion gigatons CO2 emission. Until last year, we have 36.4 billion gigaton CO2 emission. It's like how many times? 9 times. And we have such brilliant technology development, then we have such challenges still. What's wrong with our society? This is something seriously wrong. And, to me, it's very simple. We don't have a good solution. We have such great technology. We have such challenges. We need a design to be in the middle, to cook all of these technologies. I always think it's a digestion system. Design is a digestion system to digest all of this technology into our society to provide designed solutions, right? So Chubby could be a good guy, could be a bad guy. You know, the mafia say, Chubby, go to take daddy's car back. He go to say, you robbed daddy's car, and then you smash the whole car. AI could be really evil, could be really bad. But we should be socially responsible. So designers, we should look at the big picture. We are not only develop something for ourselves, we are not only develop something for leisure, for convenience. That's the past. It's over. Now, the main challenge is how can we save the world? It's not kidding. It's seriously. We have to do something about this. And one of the beautiful projects from last year was called Augmented Nature by Mick and his team. And I have a very interesting video to show you.
The act of labor crosses the boundaries of species. All animals engineer their environments, and we, the whales, do as well. From the depths, we bring nutrients to the surface. We are the ones who feed the countless microorganisms that form the basis of an entire food web. Yet our calls are overshadowed by the constant, deafening roars of your ship engines. Sabotaging our communication, your ships are killing us. Now we are taking back control. With the biotech augmenting our senses, we can avoid your ships, and they can avoid us. We can now strategically place our nutrients out of harm's way. This way, we guide the microorganisms and shape our own environment. The data we harvest guides your ships down more efficient and less destructive routes. And so, animals, the time to collaborate has come.
So thanks, Savina's great supervision for the second year of IDE. We got this brilliant project. It's breaking the boundaries between animals and human. We are not only develop something for human, we can develop something for animals. Why not? We can help them to live together.
The act of labor
within this society with these information technologies. So to be socially responsible is the first point. And also we need to design something else. Our design approach is not within the traditional design trajectory and field. We develop something using advanced materials and various of experiments and try to explore the new possibilities in many different domains and fields. For example, this is called Finite. It's a project try to using the sand as to create a new composite to create a new material, which can be really strong. And we go through scientific approach, we test it, and we got a really good ideal results to conform this material can perform as concrete as the architecture materials we need for these industries. So we also can compose some interesting materials like conductive rubber and can create a new interface for people interacting with electric devices to use this instead of keyboard or mouse. So this creating, you know, a dream for the future human computing interactions. And we also concern about the people, right? So we are also human-centered design field, taking a human-centered design approach, and which means it's not really a technology, a scientific-centric approach. We worry about the people. We always say, oh, we are human-centered, we worry about people. But when you talk about people, you always should talk about the context as well. But because nobody is living individually, is within the society. So this is the beauty of GID. We go to different places in the world. We experience different cultures, social structures. We analyze all of this. We observe people's behavior, see how do they work, how do they live, what do they need, what is the difficulties, and how this new information and other advanced technologies impact their lives. Then we developed some beautiful project like Power of X Flow, which is trying to develop a learning and a communication platform to enable different background people, including designers, art crafts, and consumers to work together to get a sense of what is the technology and how can they integrate such technology in their workflow. And also, we emphasize on the depth of explorations. And for example, you ask, what is the next generation of Google? Do you have an answer? So this is the answer called augmented thinking, right? So this explore how people could digest, absorb all of these different informations and how to categorize that and how to mapping this information in different new approach then presented it to user. So this could end up to a new generation of search engine. Why not? And we also emphasize on interactions and the behaviors. And we think people's behavior based on the context is something can lead to new innovations. So this is a brilliant project and using different fingers on the cover of the iPhone for fast typing. And when you tap, you can get very quick input. And you can see when the designers design this, go through a really rigorous experiments approach and put apart all of these electronic components and to see how it works and how you can put them back together and how can you integrate new elements into the system to create something new. Okay, so basically this is ID and the GID, and we explore new approach of design innovation. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed. Next up is Zoe from the world of fashion. Let's make sure I can...
yeah, make sure you give me notes, otherwise I'm fucked.
I know. So I'm on the microphone.
My name is Zoe Birch. I'm head of program for fashion. Yes, I'm sure I'm going to repeat a lot, but not in their program's voices, in my program's voices, my practice, and my industry. And it is interesting to see that over the last year and a half that we've been together as a School of Design, how, yeah, there are many overlaps and there are many key questions. And I think probably what's important is that we come together as a school to ask those questions, but we also define it through our differences and learn from each other, because I think that's going to be a very crucial part of the next 2 years for you, is to work out what is your practice and the impact in your own industry, but what are the overlaps and that we learn. So if I repeat, my apologies. So let me see. So what position does fashion as design have in the future, and how do we navigate in this future narrative? So for me, future systems, new materiality, and future identities. Fashion is kind of stuck until we can change the business model, which is really not protective of designers. It's the second destroyer of our planet, which is just shameful, and it's not changing, and there's these kind of pseudo statements made by our industry leaders that talk about 20, 30 years, and I'm beginning to see so much that it's just industry talking to itself, is actually not having impact beyond. So I think also just this is a key question for us to ask as fashion designers, not to be so caught in our bubble. Yeah, we're sort of all wearing and using the same materials that we've been using for a long, long time. And so then how that material builds and what that is in its relationship to the future systems and its relationship to our world is going to be key. But also we have a great power and responsibility, because who we are as people is the most powerful expression we can have and we can offer and we can be part of. So until these areas change, as a fashion designer, you're going to be doing the same thing that someone did 20 years ago, and that is not okay. We have to be party to working within the School of Design partners, and we have to ask what our role can be. So future systems is going to be about new systems of design-led manufacturing. That's us as designers working with how the machine might work, like existing machines and systems put together in new ways. Aesthetic data to pattern to 3D prototype, 3D developed with multiple substrate choice. I mean, they're great ideas, but they don't exist. And so I think being connected within the School of Design and in the RCA, how could you be part of creating these, asking these questions? Because otherwise, again, your role is being limited and held by the past, and we need to forge forward. New material for both real and virtual worlds. So biosynthetic, biomimicry, it's something I'm fascinated by, because I feel our relationship to our earth can be led by and through our material, and Anne clearly stated this kind of the power of, I mean, material goes through all, actually. I mean, textiles is actually our thread, I think. And so that relationship to the world and how, what we can find with them, what's our investigation around that. It's slow, that's the thing. So it's not so funded, and you have to be patient. And that's maybe where fashion suffers a little bit. But 2D, 3D, 4D, digital renderings, nano surfaces, very human connected, and all of that is what, as a fashion designer, we can work with people who've created new materials, but we ask about shifting the form and the silhouette and the experience. Feature identities, augmented, intangible digital skins, nudist sizes, potential camouflage, gender-free zones, no gravity, gaming, the digital enhancement. This is an area for me that, again, I feel super passionate about. I've been looking at gaming since, you know, mid-90s as a Lara girl, and nobody's explored it. The aesthetic is shocking. It's like World of Warcraft or Fortnite, and in Fortnite, the people who get paid the most are the fashion designers, but it's not the practice in the industry that I love, as in this kind of very high aesthetic that really reaches us forward. And there's so much to explore in that space. Equally, in this space, we're not making. The only problem that I now have is in my research recently around AI is if we're going to explore the virtual space where we think it's to do with being sustainable, it's not, because ultimately our bandwidth is using up gargantuan amounts of electricity. So that's also a whole other question where maybe 2 or 3 years ago, naively, I was like, okay, this is a great space for us to move into. Whereas every Google search you do is 15 seconds of a light bulb, and the Bitcoin explosion that happened back in last December took up the whole of the electricity for Ecuador. And again, this is a design problem that's coming through all our programs, that we can talk about AI and all this new tech. It is going to destroy the world too. So you can't just go into all those really nice, innovative words without understanding the wicked problems it's creating. So yeah, we need to become a new generation of leaders within the apparel industry, combining our skill sets, designer-led innovation underpinned with technology and engineering excellence. So we as fashion need to really embrace a lot of what's been talked about in all the other programs, as much as Nick commenting on Imperial around the corner. But of course, nothing is new. So Rudy Gernrich in '71 states, once the sewing machine has been replaced or sophisticated, once a designer can spray on clothes or transmigrate fabrics to the body, new things will happen. The designer will become less artist, more technician. He'll be like an architect or engineer with a sound background in chemistry. New material, again, J.G. Ballard in the 70s wrote a book called Say Goodbye to the Wind, where he talks about biofabrics and their extreme sensitivity. He refers to it as this immediate reply from the nerve-like tissues, which is kind of beautiful, because again, we're designers, but for me in fashion, we also look, and I'm sure other programs do too, but just the idea of telling stories and the narrative and our imagination. It doesn't have to be always physical and material to begin with. It begins here, actually. We imagine before we build. Future identities, again, Donna Haraway in '85, the Cyborg Manifesto, very much talks about the body as this unoccupied shell. So again, if we're fully present online and not present IRL, what does that mean? How do we feel about that? I mean, I struggle because I really love this concept, which I'm like fed up with the screen. I mean, I'm so over the screen. I so want technology to move faster so that it sort of hovers around us in this 360. At the same time, how do I connect that to the fact I love nature? I love when I go home at night, I watch Orion in the sky. And I feel that deep sense tribalism is really important to our learning, because evidently what has destroyed or is destroying our planet is based on pure capitalism and greed. And ultimately, we have to look back as much as we look forward and merge all that together. Again, Baudrillard in 2007 wrote a book, Why Hasn't Everything Already Disappeared? And he talks about the individual as a definitive spectrality. So these are the three areas that for me, until this changes, we are slightly stuck. And I think the RCA has to lead. And we have to be brave and commit and combine with our fellow SoDs, School of Designs. Probably this goes for every program. We need designers as revolutionaries. We need that they create movements, and we need that they create communities. Actually, we need a bit of all three. New ideas, new systems that break the cycles that we've been part of, and be brave enough to take on new aesthetics. Like, what does that mean? You know, are we stuck within this kind of technological, mathematical, coded aesthetic? I mean, you know it. I know you do. So I think we can look at new spaces. Translators and entrepreneurs who assist in moving this forward. Without a doubt, when you are part of the avant-garde, you speak a language that is unknown, and that's important, but you will always need people who will enable the translation of your language. And that might also happen in this early year, your first year, finding a way of how what's inside of you gets translated out. Again, Rob talked about asking questions, being fearless. And fluid communities for creation and design. Community is key. We are evidently a huge community, and yet we are also so local, and maybe we need to become more local, because evidently being the way we constructed our global community is not really working in so many ways. So what does that word mean today for you? Again, back in '69, Paco Rabanne says, who knows what clothes will be? Maybe an aerosol used to spray the body. Maybe women will be dressed in colored gases adherent to their body, or in halos of light, changing color with the movements of the sun or with the emotions. Clothes will become transparent and revert back into being ornaments once again, reflecting women's desires to free their body from all former restrictions, to let in new possibilities, free ones, really free. We'll add women, men, they, and every single letter of the alphabet to make that relevant as today. But what's interesting for me also is we're sort of in this state, we're no longer linear with a past and a future, we're just in this place. So the stories have been, the questions and the stories have been told, we're retelling them. We've been through an amazing era where we've told stories, but it's taking us in the wrong direction. So we've got to reweave those stories in new ways. Thank you.
So now we have Rob for design products. Rob, I'm going to unplug mine.
Fab.
Unplug that.
What have we got?
And you are, it's all, you, and you're going to plug that in.
Over you, baby.
It's over to you, yeah.
Cool. Awesome shit.
Gosh, that's So now you see the designers, the digestive system, yeah. The system innovator, the revolutionary.
Fab.
Yeah, the environmental textile warrior, where I just love that textiles is our thread. I thought that was a beautiful comment. So, anyway, Rob, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very kind. So, today I'm representing Saima, our head of program, and my talk is very different from the others because I'm talking around our beliefs, mainly because I'm presenting part of Design Products work and methodologies next week in a full lecture. So I'm giving you, I suppose, a bit of a taste. So what we strive to do in Design Products and Futures is really go, what is a product? And I think that's, for us, it's a core question. So sometimes that might be an impact. It might be giving someone who's never been able to climb a tree the experience of being able to climb a tree because it makes them smile. It makes us happy. That's okay. All right, we're allowed to do that. It might be playing with a technology. One of my favorite examples, the top right-hand corner, Jane, who used to be on DP. So she created Sugru. You probably know it or have interacted with it. My favorite point, though, was when she got feedback from one of her users that was playing with it. And it was from a dad. And I'm a dad of 2, and so this story really resonates with me. And this father was trying to look for a really good, high-quality digital camera for their child, but they couldn't find one because all of the, I don't know whether I can say brand names, all of the Fisher-Price or anything else knockoffs were kind of really low-res. And so he adapted and used the Sugru to make this kind of bomb-proof camera. And so suddenly that object became the user's and it transferred, and I find that absolutely fascinating. So we have DP is in its 20th year this year, and we have a number of mix of alum internationally all over the world doing really exciting things. And amongst our team, we have experts in so many different fields. So our head of program, she has history looking at the systems and processes and management in oil rigs, which I find pretty fascinating. Empathy, myself, and I'll go through that next week. Strategy, design is at the core. Design is the thread that stitches everything together, and I think it's the thing that pulls and binds people. I think manufacture and technology are terms that you also, within your cultural context, should talk a lot more about, because technology is a tool. It doesn't necessarily just mean it's smart, okay? A spade is a piece of technology if it's applied in the right way. And so don't just dismiss things. You know, whilst we're looking at digital, we can also look at analog, and that's really interesting forms of what is the next materials, and I completely agree with every viewpoint here. So we have one visiting professor, Sir Kenneth Grange, who's brilliant, and he always used to tell me this. So what we mean is, and my piece of advice to you is, please don't bind your projects by this space or this building. Everything, and I do mean everything, changes when you engage with people, when you take things outside, when you're playful, when you give yourself room for risk. Because suddenly the thing is that we always go, does this product, this service, this opportunity, does it work? And actually they'll probably give you negative feedback, and that's great, because you go, this project's not about this, it's about something else. And those insights are absolutely critical. Okay, I mean, everyone says fail early, you know, all the ideos or background of that, but seriously, it will change your world as soon as you put yourself in that position of vulnerability. And it's scary. It is scary. You kind of got to deal with that, because that's the fun bit. Have an informed opinion. So, you know, quite a lot of academics will always say, yes, okay, look at different perspectives. Okay, this terrifies the bejesus out of me. Okay, but look at things like the World Economic Forum. Why? Because they're going, what's the future of finance? What's the future of how we're going to engage as a world? Look at the World Health Organization. Why? Because they're doing really instrumental things on a strategic level. So we all talk, and I share quite a lot with our DP students, who, so far, you all rock, by the way. They really enjoyed working with you, the first years especially. The most important thing is, it's not just about, you know, developing how you see things. It's building on the back of other people as well, because these are experts in their field. That's what's critical. So suddenly you start to shed light on these different challenges. So I've got just a few examples. I hate this film, like with a passion, with a deep, deep passion. But one thing that I love is that we are the constant, okay? And that doesn't change. We get ill, we lie, we forget to pick up our kids, we lose our kids, we fall asleep in a lecture, we go, oh yeah, I'm trying to remember that thing, and I tie a knot in a handkerchief to remember the thing that I can't remember the thing of. Okay, we're human, and that doesn't change. Okay, please, can you look at the little cereal packet in this next video? Hopefully the acoustics working, the sound's working. Oh, fiddlesticks. Come on. Oh, that's really annoying. It's a lovely little bit of design. So basically, it's an advertising campaign. When you pick up the cereal packet, it plays a piece of music to, like, you know, Dancing Rice Krispies. Okay, and so he puts it down, and it keeps on playing, and he puts it down again, and it keeps on playing, and he gets frustrated with it, so he throws it away. And these little insights, so, you know, IoT, the amount of times that you, right, if you've got Nest or anything like that, great, you've got a system. I want Hot House. Log in with your email. I'm tired, I can't remember my login. Can you just make it work? Yeah, because that's how we're getting, because we're living in busy lives. Don't forget that we're still human. It's like my daughter, seriously, she walks up to a newspaper. We don't, like, she's 2, right, and she does this. I'm like, whoa, okay? And it terrifies me. And the first time I was in San Francisco with our dean at Google, and I had a Skype with her. And for literally the next, like, month, she walked up to my computer, or my wife's computer, and just went, "Hello, Daddy." And I was like, God, what have I done? And that's how we assimilate these things. And so you've got to remember to explore, because that's how the happy accidents come out of things. And so this is an example. This is one of a graduate a while ago, a long time ago, Anab Jain. Find influences, but also have fun. So this was an idea, a concept that we shared last week with our students. And it was just an idea of drawing on the back of a car, right, okay, and the idea that, you know, you had an intelligent technology that would then make that move. Beautiful, beautiful piece of design for communication. And the one thing that I love it even more is that this piece was showed to Microsoft and other people, and they were like, oh, this is amazing, what technology is this, and how's this going to work? This was on a table, and they had a magnet underneath the table, and they moved it about, okay? But the thing was, is it was a communication piece that said, look, we can get this technology, this is what we're trying to achieve. And never forget that power of kind of how you're able to pitch or build things, I think, is really important. This is a very short film, and I'll explain the context in a second.
Look at all the jewels. These people are loaded.
You know what stealing is? I don't have any thoughts on that.
I know exactly who the first mark is going to be. Okay, let's see what you can do.
According to your file, you were first arrested for possessing stolen goods.
I specialized in jewelry. That was your best time yet.
I'm getting the hang of it.
We're going to clean up.
So, it's a film called Robot and Frank, and it's one of my favorites because basically he's retired, his children are really, really worried about him, so they buy him this, like, happy little robot to make his life better and grow tomatoes and go for a walk and do all this kind of utopian stuff. But he's an ex-jewel thief, so he trains this robot to do, like, a series of jewelry thieves, jewelry heists. And I love it because it starts to look at the ethics of things. So what happens when you train a robot to pick a lock? Oh, okay, actually, yeah, on one level, this is kind of satirical. But now we start to think about, right, it's your house, how does that happen? We look 10 years ago when people were sharing their Facebook posts of, yeah, we're going on holiday and this is where I live and we'll see you later. And that didn't end so well, yeah? People were, like, encouraged not to do that. So I think whilst we think about the utopian, sometimes we have to design for the dystopian as well, which is really, really important. And I think because then you can unpick lots of different factors. And as I share, and I'm sorry, DP students, I didn't bring any swords today, but context is absolutely everything. And before we get too down, I've been absolutely honoured to do a bit of work with this man on a previous project that I'm running at the moment. And I'm just going to leave this here as a thought piece. It's not too mushy. I think it's super cool.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright, blessed days, dark, sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colours of a rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what
a wonderful world. So, I mean, with all this, if anyone asks me what I'm personally designing for, and I will get to that next week, but this stuff, okay, because everything has an impact on this, and just forget that, yeah, okay, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff happening. That's pretty amazing, yeah, and that's why we're here, to do some pretty cool stuff. So thank you.
Yeah. We've got about half an hour or so for questions, and I'm going to actually throw it straight away. We will have a kind of conversation between you, but we will. But I'll moderate the questions, but I'm going to throw it straight away to the audience. Now, we're going to need this mic to pick up, who would like to ask the first question? Can we pass the mic back to you?
And can you say your name, please, and which program you're from? It's really nice.
Yes, we can hear you. And John, are we getting sound from the? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you go for it.
So my name is Kieran. I'm from service design. So I'm just curious because the example of minority support came up twice, and I want to know, kind of across your different disciplines, how much inspiration do you take from science fiction? And do you see any other kind of methods or practices being equally as kind of forward-thinking in expressing different inspiration?
Right, so who would like to start? Guy, do you want to comment on science fiction and how it's inspired you, or Minority Report, which most of us absolutely love as a film, but hate what it's done to the world of UX design?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a massive science fiction nerd. So, yeah, but the idea, you know, it's not just taking the idea of a sci-fi movie. It's the actual fundamental ideas behind science fiction, where effectively you take an idea and place it out of context, and then have another look at it. That is, it's almost a template for good design thinking. You take an idea and maybe turn it on its head. So that's where these things start to get very, very interesting indeed. And by that I mean good science fiction. You know, pulp science fiction tends not to do it, although sometimes you'll look at pulp science fiction and find some very, very interesting ideas very well hidden. But absolutely, when it's done well, it's almost like a design process. So I always encourage my students to look at these things, and there are ideas that are usually in there that are very, very interesting indeed.
Rob?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the most important thing is that it provides a narrative that you understand. It locates the technology in a specific context, in a situation. I don't agree with a lot of sci-fi, because I think some of it's kind of like, it's antiquated. It's kind of, it's made like, oh, okay, great. If you were doing that, surely you just talk to somebody, because it's a bit easier, or you know. But however, you've got to remember that they're making a film, and they're making good TV. They're not necessarily just designing. But I think the narrative that science fiction and the frame, and we often talk in DP about how you're framing projects for the audience. I think that's what's most important.
I love science fiction. And I've done a lot of reading of it recently because it seems super relevant, and I'm kind of very interested in the thinking that came out of early 90s. If you look at Neil Stephenson, he's referenced all the time and used and blah blah blah, but it's from a fashion perspective, what I find fascinating, you go back and it's all about technology, but what they don't discuss is the aesthetic. Actually, identity becomes very thematic. So I guess it's what you look at and then how you look at it and through what practice. At the same time, I read this thing the other day where, can we imagine a world without science fiction? What will that word mean as we move forward? I feel we kind of understand our future so much. We have so much information, we're so connected. So that feels like it's disintegrated as a future word, and it has become quite a nostalgic word. That would be my take.
Other comments on science fiction, anyone?
Yep, I think it's science fiction is pretty good resources for inspirations, but only the good ones. For example, for example, the Space Odyssey 2001, right? That's the classic one, and 80% technology has been predicted in that movie become true already. And other movies, it's like Terminator or something, I don't think can inspire you a lot. So I think you need to use the critical attitude to look at the science fiction movies and choose the good ones and choose the good designs. And but we always say in our programs, before you can make your decisions, your vision is the most important thing. What do you see the future?
Thank you very much. And any comments or?
Well, I'd just like to finish up by saying that for me, science fiction has become science fact in terms of textile advances and materials that can be done often on a very small scale. So for designers, you've now got this incredible sort of palette of things to design with, to use in some way. So I think it does come back to your visions, your motivations, your convictions on how you use those things, which are going to be very, very important. And you pick your films carefully.
Yeah, because you all sit right as design. We sit on that kind of cusp, that intersection. Coming back to Savina's comments about intersection between technology, society, and culture. You know, and as designers, we can shape it in some way. But that means we've got to get really informed about technology. And sometimes science fiction, again, is a source of inspiration, absolutely brilliant. But also to alert us to some of the dystopian futures that might await us, because the people who are pumping a lot of tech at us are not thinking in the round. They're thinking in terms of the venture capital that's invested often in those businesses and making sure that the rewards return to those who are part of it. And that venture capital has enough resources to be able to organize the hype around itself. So, you know, it always comes with a kind of beware sign.
The thing also, though, coming back to also what some of you said, is all the sci-fi I've read recently, including a great book by Nick Haraway called Nomon, they're great. The end is always disappointing, but it's actually really fulfilling because it's just us, if that makes sense. It's just sort of love, hate, jealousy, anger. It's really, really human.
Yeah.
So
the constant, as Rob said, yeah.
It's sort of, there's an interesting place in sci-fi where it pulls you right back to old ancient tribalism and collides the two, but the core of who we are remains the same.
Right. Oh yes, yes. Absolutely. We need the microphone back next time. Okay. Right. Next question, and then you're going to have to pass the microphone. There's a hand gone up at the back. The lady with the orange sweater at the back, and then could somebody bring the mic down to us at the front? Okay. I think it's working okay. It's just that it's not amplified in the room.
Okay. So I'm Carolina. Nice to meet you all. And I just came across with this question because now in this lecture we have your perspective what it is the future and what it might be. And I just wonder, what is your perspective of the past? Can we change it? Can we? I'm just curious to know what is your perception of the past.
Whilst we get the microphone down, who would like to start?
You can speak because you're the only one with the mic.
Get the microphone here quickly. So no, but in your question, are you implying by that the role of design in the past, or are we talking about the past in a much broader sense?
Well, as you wish. It's just a very general question.
Well, okay. I'm going to start it from the role of the designer in the past, and I'm actually going to quote to you from the person that took over from Sir Misha Black in 1975. And he wrote in his inaugural lecture, and I have his notes in front of me here, there is the world crisis of resources, food, minerals, and energy. Sounds familiar? This is 1975. There is a crisis in our faith that the organizations that we deal with are capable of coping with the obvious defects of modern society. Again, does that sound familiar to you? And design needs to be involved in this. So if I turn the clock back 43 years, in the inaugural lecture that took place in this room, those were the comments that were being made. Now, to me, design has done a lot in the last 30, 40 years to begin to step up to the plate in terms of being able to make an impact on some of the big issues of the day. But, and it is a big but, I actually do believe that we've raised our level of ambition in terms of what we'll cope with, but we now need to raise our level of competencies, which is why the RCA is so important, and why some of the themes we've touched on here touch a lot of areas that means that all of you will need to go with a model of inquiry to learn how to make a difference. So if I was to say, can design learn from the past, it is that it has to get out, to use the words that I think Rob used earlier, we have to get out of our bubble. We have to rediscover, I think, what Zoe was saying about becoming revolutionaries, beginning to challenge systems, to be able to make that kind of difference. But we can only do that if we're going to sharpen our critical thinking here, if we also are well informed. And that is a big responsibility. Ill-informed critical thinking can be a dangerous diversion. Well-informed critical thinking can move the world on. And I think that's something we should learn from the past because, again, we've spoken about it 45 years ago, but I don't know that design picked up and ran with that in the way it could. So, other comments?
Just a comment really about silk. If you think about this most ancient of material, but some of the work that's been done by someone called Fiorenzo Omanetto has really taken silk apart right down to a molecular level and rebuilt it in a way. So I would say to you, don't overlook the things that you think are historical, they belong to yesterday. There's always something new to be found when you look back as well as looking forwards. So don't keep your vision in one space. Make it 360.
I feel the past is like what Umberto Eco calls an anti-library, like all the books I've never read. And if I was just to pick up one, and again, similar reference to Nick, Laszlo Naholy-Nagy book, Vision in Motion, just read the preface. Again, it feels the same as of today. So I think that tells us a lot about who we are, and I feel, for me, I don't like nostalgia. It's just not for me. But I learned so much from what I would call past masters. I don't think that's restricted to the world of design. I'm talking about artists and performers, the whole spectrum, scientists, chemists, historians. They're just great people who've kind of discovered things, and maybe you'll find someone who has spoken in a way that is similar to you. It's like, I believe we're all kind of got these kind of traces that lead us backwards, if you like. So you find your kind of past members of your tribe, and they help you learn about how your tribe is and how you then have a responsibility to take it forward.
Cool, thank you. So I'm going to pick up an example of the printing press, because it's something that totally, as a piece of manufacturing, it totally transformed the way that we could get the message of anything out. So it started off, printing the Bible, and then very slowly it started to become democratized, and people could start to go, right, well, I can organize an event, or I can organize a political rally, and I can actually get my things printed. And now you're starting to look at, when we were at Autodesk 6 months ago, you can get a stereo lithographer and printer that just sits on your phone and uses the light from the screen to actually cure the resin. So this mass democratization of technology, and I don't mean that everyone has to make things, it's more that stuff's got cheaper, stuff's got more accessible. So now, rather than people just designing technologies, you've got school teachers making weather stations to tell their kids, and then the kids are building things to understand their local environment. So accessibility is changing absolutely everything, and I think you can borrow from historical lessons to then take forwards. So, it's a really interesting time.
Past Guy and then to Stephen.
Okay, now this is a bit of a weird one. If you're trying to look to the past, there's one fundamental thing that's constant, and that's people. The way people think, the way people feel, has stayed fundamentally the same. That doesn't change. The technologies, the systems you've got access to, that changes. That does affect people's, kind of outward desires. It may appear that way, but it doesn't really. People are fundamentally the same. They want the same things. What people wanted 40, 50, 60 years ago has not fundamentally changed. The kind of material wants might be different, but the kind of personal and emotional needs, those stay the same. And that's something as designers you've really got to understand.
Yeah. I think all the hops give you pretty good message. I just want to add up one point. I think when we talk about the vision of the future, the main vision is, to me, is all of these key questions being answered. So to you, the most important thing is to figure out what is the main question. So to me, the question one is how human will live with the technologies together. Human-machine symbiotic society, what is that? And the second is, what do you mean by sustainability? What's your interpretation of sustainability? And how can we do anything about it? Yeah, I think then the third will be try to explore your unique perspectives. For example, as I mentioned, silk, the traditional material techniques. For example, how about combine feng shui, field, qi theory into interaction design? What's gonna happen? So some new possibilities. Try to explore.
Okay. Next question. Yes. Oh, we've got some of the young men up there. Right. Pass it back to the gentleman in the blue shirt there. That is you, yes? Yes.
I just wanted to ask you, so there seems to be a bit of a contradiction where you said that people, in a sense, remain the same. And then moving forward in the future, I think we need to change if we have to overcome these massive problems. So I'd like to know how you would sort of comment between this sort of paradox of remaining the same and changing?
All right, Zoe's going to answer this one.
Okay, I've thought about this a lot. We are not changing. I mean, you have 2,000 years at least of quite a lot of, like really great writers, people like Yuval Harari and all sorts of things that you can read now. There's a great book called The Age of Anger by Pankaj Mishra, I think it's called. It's a great book looking at the last 200 years of revolution and terrorism, but read through all the writings of literature that connected these people, not just so binary as one would think. And I feel, my humble opinion is that core of us remains the same. And I went to a lecture many years ago now, and I think, and I feel a bit uncomfortable about this, but I think it's only when actually we physically change our internals, possibly we might. Like if the potential of being given the eyes like a hawk, or if we could smell as sharply as, say, a dog, or if we understand more about what's in our brain. So instead of being obsessed with just AGI, artificial general intelligence, understanding that actually this is the most phenomenal intelligence, that artificial intelligence is not a thing, it is us, but what's in here we know little. So I think that's really my take on it. We remain the same because we have done, and you see the repeats in history. And history, therefore, is very powerful in that way for us to understand who we are and what our needs are. And so just creating more ideas, I think there's absolute kind of interlink between us and really the phenomenal access to knowledge we have and the phenomenal people that have done that research to link up so much of that. Then you link it to working with, what if we change inside of us? Will that be the only way that we change? And it's kind of a little bit depressing, in a way. Yeah, I don't know, but it's a great question to maybe have a debate about, and a question to kind of take forward, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just something. I think that the things that I've said earlier today about how much the RCA resonates across the world and how influential the people are that come out of here. And I would actually throw this back to you guys. We're now growing in terms of our student body. We've got a pretty good critical mass here at any one time. You are the voices of the future, and I'm going to throw this one back to you guys. You need to take charge of this, and you need to make the differences and do something that's going to change. You've got incredible power, so please, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, so one book that you should definitely read is Dan Pink. It's about, he writes quite a lot about motivation. And we're just going to take a very quick straw poll. How many of you wear leather shoes or any kind of leather shoes? Yeah, quite a few. Okay, how many of you polish your shoes? Wow, that's good. Okay, so when I asked that before, usually people are like, oh no. Behavior change is really, really hard, and it takes quite a long time. And one specific example, just a colleague, he was dropping his kids off at nursery, and what they started to do was go, every time you're late, we're going to charge you £15. And the reverse in the behavior happened. He went, oh great, I'll be late, and it will just cost me 15 quid. And you're just like, that's not the point. We are habitual animals. If you ever travel on a train, people stand in the same place. They stand in the same place on the platform. They like the same smell. They like the same clothes. If they go back to the shop and they're not selling the next version of the thing, they go, this is a bit weird. You know, people go shopping in Tesco's, and everyone does it, or at a supermarket. They moved the stuff. Well, of course they moved the stuff, idiot. You know, they're trying to place it in a different store because you've got new products online, but you feel angry at them because you can't find the thing you're doing. And these are really small things. So you kind of got to give us a little bit of a break, that it's going to take a generation to start to understand things. And I think, you know, how you start to design for behaviour change, let's have a further conversation about that, because I'm totally on board with that. But it's often about incremental changes, not about mass changes, because they take too long.
No, I think that's a hugely important point. You know, if you can plot a kind of graph on one axis, you can kind of have technological innovation, and the other axis, behavioral change. And lots of people think, I've got this great new technology, and you're all going to be riding Segways in the future. And it doesn't happen, because you can't go to that box. You've got to kind of take people through, and behavioral change takes longer. And there are all kinds of techniques of behavioral psychology, behavioral economics, which is now exactly in that kind of field. But I just want to bring it down to something else as well. About half of the people in this room will live to be around 100. So if we take 100, because it also makes the arithmetic easy as a lifetime, it means that Christ walked this earth 20 lifetimes ago. It doesn't sound a lot, really, when you put it in that kind of context. The first cities emerged about 70 lifetimes ago. The Enlightenment was kind of 3 lifetimes ago. You start to get the picture that actually within your lifetimes, we've not been around very long, which means that we're setting the trajectory for how lots of other people that will follow us, because we're the pathfinders here about being human, what's going to happen. And as designers, we have an opportunity to shape that. So if you're the ones who are setting the trajectory of how mankind can be, which sounds very overblown, but I don't think it is, because I've seen the impact that designers had over my lifetime. So please set the trajectory really well, and I'm sure we'll get a question about ethics in a minute. So I'm going to pass on to Stephen if you'd like to comment, or Guy. Enough. Had a good one. Okay, we've got a time for a couple more questions. Yes, who over? We've not had anyone right at the back. There's a lady. No, yes, you get the microphone. It's coming your way. Stand up so that it can be passed. I'm going to tell you in a minute about, we were at CERN the other day, and they had, CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, they've got a microphone in a ball, so you can throw the ball. Right, and then you get the mic. Anyway, sorry.
It's quite a big question, but what are your views on plastic as a design material?
On plastics as a design material? Whoa, who wants to begin on this one? Stephen, you didn't comment on the last. Plastics. Have you seen the film The Graduate? How many of you have seen the film The Graduate? All right. The others who haven't put their hand up, you've got to see the film The Plastic, because there's a line in there, and this man says to Dustin Hoffman as he gets out of a swimming pool, "Young man, I tell you, the future, plastics." So,
okay, plastics.
Right. Was it the future or the past?
First, I think plastics are evil.
Wow.
I think it's evil material, same as petroleum cars.
Oh.
Yeah, can I? Yeah, look. Yeah, this is exactly what I look at this. Yeah, you know, it's plastics from petrols, from the oils, right? So you dig out all of this fossil material from underneath of the earth, then build up plastics, and take 100 years to disappear. And all of this is killing different animals in the sea and making our environment become very horrible and polluted, and just make us a little bit convenient. Right, I don't, it's not a good equation in my mind. Yeah, I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's worth to do so. So if the history could go back, I think we should develop the cars in different way. We should develop plastics, these kind of materials, to satisfy such needs using different approach.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Guy, the plastic car, plastic mobility.
Okay.
Plasticity of ideas.
You wouldn't be here today. We would not be here today without plastics. Now, that's the development of plastics basically supercharged the Industrial Revolution. It's allowed us to make incredible bits of technology that have got us here today. It's got us into a huge problem as well. But that is the challenge. How do we keep moving forwards and change from using plastics? The materials do exist. Materials have existed for a long time, but we now got to move into that. So I don't think they're necessarily bad, basically, because my best toy when I was growing up was Lego, and it still is. That's one of the greatest pieces of engineering plastics in the world. It's also one of the greatest pieces of engineering in the world. And that's kind of helped me and a lot of my counterparts to become great designers and great engineers. but it's the idea that you can go back, you can't. And again, that's a very, very important thing. You can't change what's happened. I did an interesting thing a few years ago. I took part in a beach clean down on the south coast, and we're picking up various bits of junk off a beach. It was partly from a ship which had sunk carrying a load of wood, but we're picking up lots of little, very small bits of yellow plastic. Lots of them. And I was talking to the park ranger who I was with and saying, "Oh yeah, what's this from?" And he said, "Oh yeah, you remember 2 years ago there was a ship that sank in the North Sea carrying a load of Kinder eggs?" And it wasn't just carrying a load of Kinder eggs, it was carrying a lot of other stuff. But it was 2 containers of Kinder eggs. And the containers had burst open in a storm, and all those little bits of plastic are everywhere. And you're saying, that ain't going away. So that's the challenge for everybody who's designing now. You've got to try and find something that gets around that problem, because it will stay forever, and it will have an effect, and it is having an effect. But you can't go back. So you have to work out, how do we go forwards and do better?
Yeah, I'm going to go to straight down to textile. Anne, I mean, you are the wonderful world of materials.
Well, I would just really like to echo Guy's comments there, because I think plastic has been incredibly fantastic and useful and beneficial in so many ways, and without it a lot of things wouldn't have happened. However, we now know what we know. We didn't know it then, we know it now. So now is the time to take responsibility and to look for alternatives. And there are alternatives. Sometimes they're clunky, and you have to work through that a little bit. Sometimes the first time you try working with an alternative material, it won't be as elegant as the thing that you knew before. And you might have to have several goes at that, fail with it a few times, work your way around it. Don't just give up because the first time it happens, it's okay, well, it's not as good as that material, so forget it. Stick with it, push it, make it work, find the solutions, and work through that. And you guys have that, you know, you've got the capacity, the imagination, and the talent to do that. So again, I'm going to say the same thing. I'm throwing it back out to you guys. It's for you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on from plastics, and just to add to your question, last night there was a thing on BBC. It's an iPlayer by a lady called Stacey Dooley, who I love. If you don't watch TV, I totally understand, but worth watching her. And she's done a thing called Clothes Wrecking the Planet or something. And that was not about plastic, that was about cotton. And she went to Kazakhstan and looked at the Aral Sea, and they showed 2 satellite images of this sea that's, I think it's half the size of the whole of the Great Britain. So a pretty big sea, and it's disintegrated to almost like the corner tip of Cornwall, which is not, you know, is like a, I mean, if you don't know Cornwall, it's like maybe a 50th. Watch the program. It's phenomenal, because it's just, again, the times we're in are so much more complex than just one question, and that's hard, but it's not just plastic. And this all feeds back to the exponentiality of who we are. It all feeds back to not just a sort of an initial, it's about the huge education. And unfortunately, we're also incredibly privileged, and we have to make sure our intelligence doesn't just stay within this group. It has to jettison outside. And that's what's great about the TV program, because Stacey Dooley reaches your average person, and they had no idea about the questions she's asking. And you realize how kind of we are a bit privileged and inward looking. So we have these questions, we have this knowledge, we have to come up with design solutions, but most importantly, a huge part of that is not just your education, but how you will lead in educating the planet we're on.
So quickly, how many of you are wearing 100% natural fibres in every single part of your body? None of you. Okay, so
well, I've got buttons.
Yeah. So I mean, to be practical, cost You know, and there are amazing materials technologies that are coming online, and I completely agree with Stephen. But I'd also urge you to watch one documentary. Okay, it's brilliant. It was about 15 years ago it came out, but it's about Tupperware. Okay, and the origination of Tupperware by Karl Tupper. And the whole thing is that during a mass depression and a material innovation.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's the sound of plastic.
Yeah.
But what he did was he totally changed the business model of how people could generate their own revenue. And it's really, really exciting. And I think the thing is that we've never been in a position, and I mean this in the last, 40, 50 years, where we've had to deal with the consequences of the materials that we've created. Okay, now we are, which is great. So actually, if you start to go, say for example, Lego is starting to use sugarcane plastics. In the last month, they're starting to go, how are we responsible for the disposal of what we're doing? I mean, how many of you have owned more than 3 laptops in your lifetimes? Probably quite a few. Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay. So things like the Restart project, where we're taking things apart and we're disposing them. Our culture is totally changing. And I've harped on about this for years. I reckon in the next 5 years, there will be standards, the same as, how you test a material, prove a material, that come down to sustainability. And until legislation informs those things, nothing else will. Because why should Apple go, you have to take that thing apart? Why? Because it makes them more money, because they sell these bloody things. Right? Okay, and until then, until legislation informs that, then that's where you're dealing with policy and government, and that is an interesting conversation for design to start having. Cool.
Gosh, what an amazing range of things we've talked about today. We're going to do a wrap in a moment, but what I was just going to ask, if everybody would be up for it, is just to give, in 30 seconds, a little hint, tip, or suggestion. You can't pack up yet.
That's the tip.
Yeah. Little hint or tips to our students out there who are just embarking on an amazing 2 years with us. Little word of advice. Who wants to begin? All right.
Meet or talk to one useful person a week. Doesn't matter who they are, okay? I mean, from a cleaner to a nuclear scientist. Just one person. Skype them, reach out, start getting in the habit of talking to people. Okay?
Guy.
Make something.
Yeah.
Make something. That's the most important thing. The ideas in your head are great. Conversations are awesome. Make stuff.
Okay, similar point. Try something. Yeah. Experiments is very important. So try some new approach, new material, something people never seen or never tried before. Okay, so this will be probably the most valuable outcomes in your study experience here.
The pass down.
I think the most important thing is to take risks and to try something. Be really brave. Do you know, it doesn't matter if you fail, because you'll learn from that and you'll go on and do something else from that. The real danger is if you don't try something new, you'll end up coming out of this place the same as you came in. And what is the point in that? So try something new. Don't be afraid of failure. You'll turn it round. You're all clever. You're all smart. You'll turn that round into something fantastic.
Be true to yourself.
And from me, finally, on this one, be courageous, be ambitious, and come and talk to us about how you can make the visions that you have turn into reality. And if that means getting hold of government ministers, if it means going off to 10 Downing Street, if it means going to meet the head of the UN, we will do everything in our power to help you achieve that, so long as it's a good idea. And invest in it. So will you join me in thanking all the heads of programs for Brilliant. Now, before you all disappear off, and I'm not going to show you any more PowerPoints tonight, but I want to tell you about the big project we've got planned for you. Yeah, you guys.
say thank you so
No.
much.
It's very together here. No, but seriously, you are joining a big family. See it as that. This is just a great big family you're part of. And the thing about it, the RCA, you never really leave the RCA in the end. You graduate, you become one of our alumni, you're part of this network. But let me tell you about the project, which will run through. The project that comes out of the School of Design program, you will embark very seriously on the last 2 weeks of this term and the beginning of next term. It'll cover a 4-week period. It'll be a chance to put into action all the things that you've learnt on the cross-school program. We're aiming literally, I'm going to say for the stars, we're aiming actually more than that, it's at the level of the universe. Let me explain what it is. You've all heard, I hope, of CERN, the home of the Large Hadron Collider. Yeah? Right, proton beams going 27 kilometers around in a circle, colliding. It's the biggest set of experimental activity on the planet. There are more than 20 nations that collaborate to run CERN, and there are about 10,000 scientists there. This project is about interdisciplinary innovation. We are going to work with the scientists from CERN. Savina and I went out there last week to meet with all of the scientists, and we worked with, not all of them, all 10,000, they filled the room. Yeah. And we've asked them, what are the big issues that really cut to the core for them? I don't mean the technological ones, the ones which are affecting areas. And they came back with health and well-being, the issues of sustainability and clean energy. They came up with issues about the future of work and where that is going. And they came up with the issues which is concerning them, and amazingly, because it's the hottest technologies on the planet, what are the technologies that they have spinning out of CERN and their awareness of technology that can transform those areas of issues. But to do it, they need design, and they need us. So what you're going to be hearing more about over the next weeks is how we're going to be bringing you together in teams that are brought together from all the different different programs. So you'll work in an interdisciplinary team. You'll get immersed in some of the kind of deep science from CERN, and we're going to show you how you can put that together and work with you to create meaningful propositions that will end up going not only back to CERN but into a major exhibition that's part of that. Both the Work in Progress show as well as a major symposium that will be held at CERN. Now, some of you, it's going to be quite competitive. Well, we like that, the best ideas that will surface. The winning teams will go off next year to the Large Hadron Collider. You will go down under the ground and you will go and experience what's happening at CERN. You know, we believe here at the Royal College of Art that design, and you've heard the role of design in lots of different ways here, but we are about sitting at that intersection between the world of technology, which can bring so much opportunity, the world of commerce and enterprise, which can provide the drive and the engine. But we can sit at the steering wheel, steering that through the world of design to kind of really make a huge impact. And so working with CERN in this way, and tackling some of the big issues that we've just outlined here, that's the project that you'll be working with. So please read the brief, which will be coming out to you next week as part of it. We'll touch more about it in the lectures that you have during it. We'll be having a big hackathon with CERN on the 23rd of October, which is one of the lectures that we have, so only a couple of weeks away. Does that sound good? Sound interesting? Sound galactic? Well, it's universal, so it's more than that. Anyway, thank you all very much for coming today. Very good. Well done, everyone. And we'll see you next week. Yeah, brilliant.